What do you do when your store is clean, your numbers look fine, but your people keep quitting? Darren Mitchell leaned back in the cold leather of his office chair, staring at the resignation email on his screen. The fourth cashier in 3 months had just quit at the same location, Store 5, one of 7 retail stores he had grown from a tiny pop-up in a flea market 10 years ago. Back then, he had handled the register himself, stocked shelves, cleaned floors. Now he was CEO of a company with over 80 employees, but recently something felt off. The turnover at Store 5 was too frequent to ignore. The district manager, Elena, kept reassuring him that everything was under control. But Darren wasn't the type to rely on filtered updates. He wanted the raw truth, not the polished version. He decided to go undercover. The idea wasn't new. He'd done it twice before when launching new locations, posing as a temp worker to evaluate operations. His disguise this time was simple but convincing: slightly graying hair dyed back to black, trimmed beard, colored contacts, and a new name, Derek Miles. He wore a thrift store windbreaker and jeans, the kind of outfit that made him look like a guy down on his luck, hoping for a fresh start. No one at Store 5 had met him in person. It was a corporate-run location, and he'd never had a reason to visit directly. All communication had gone through the chain store manager to district manager to leadership. Perfect cover. He applied through a staffing agency they worked with and got a placement as a seasonal trainee. "We're short-staffed," the agency had told him. "They'll take anyone with a pulse right now." When he walked in on his first day, the place looked fine at first glance. Clean aisles, stocked shelves. But the energy was off. Customers didn't get greeted. A woman stood at the returns counter for 5 minutes before someone even acknowledged her. "Name?" the manager asked without looking up. "Derek Miles," Darren replied as he adjusted his name tag. The store manager, a tall man in his 40s with slicked back hair and a permanent scowl, barely glanced at him. "You're the new temp? Great. Don't slow us down." That was his welcome. He was assigned to shadow a young cashier named Gianna Jacobs. Early 20s, wide brown eyes, and a tired but polite smile. She wore compression gloves on her hands and moved like someone used to standing too long. "Hey, I'm Gianna. You're with me today," she said. "It's mostly scanning and bagging." "Stick close." Darren nodded. "Got it." The morning rush picked up fast. Gianna handled it smoothly, greeting customers, moving quickly, even throwing in little compliments that made people smile. "I like your earrings," she told an older woman. "They're so cute." The woman beamed. "Thank you, dear. That's kind of you." Darren noticed she skipped her break without complaint. "Aren't you supposed to go now?" he asked. She shrugged. "If I leave, the line'll be out the door. I'll go after the lunch rush." He watched her ring up a man with a cart full of discounted items, then pause when she got to a dented box. "This one's damaged," she said. "I can give you an extra 10% off if you still want it." The man nodded, grateful. She turned to Darren. "Always look out for customers. If you treat them right, they come back." He nodded slowly. She wasn't just good, she was running that front on her own. Around noon, the store manager passed by and muttered under his breath, just loud enough for Darren to hear, "She's too soft. I don't need a damn therapist at checkout." Darren froze. He hadn't expected that. He didn't even understand it. Gianna was doing everything right. Fast, sharp, polite. She hadn't made a single mistake all morning. Gianna heard it too. Her smile didn't break, but something in her eyes dimmed. She lowered her voice. "That's Mr. Byron. Just ignore it." Darren kept his mouth shut, but something twisted in his chest. This was the kind of thing that never showed up in reports. No wonder people kept quitting. He decided to stay the rest of the day. In the break room, he saw Gianna writing something in a small notebook. He glanced over. "Budget stuff," she said, not looking up. "Trying to make the paycheck stretch. Rent went up." She closed the notebook and stood. "Let's get back to it." Darren followed her out, but his thoughts were spinning. The numbers on the reports didn't show this. They didn't show strained workers skipping breaks, or managers making quiet jabs that chipped away at morale. He wasn't here to watch anymore. He was here to see it all. And he was just getting started. The next morning began with a delivery truck arriving late. Darren, still Derek, to everyone in the store, helped unload crates of merchandise into the back room. The driver apologized profusely, blaming construction on the highway. Byron, the store manager, didn't say a word to him. Instead, he muttered about useless contractors and walked off mid-sentence, leaving Darren and a stock associate named Tino to move the rest of the crates themselves. Tino was barely 19, wiry, and had earbuds hanging from his hoodie collar. He moved fast, but his breathing was shallow and he winced when lifting the heavier boxes. "You good?" Darren asked as he set a crate down. "Yeah, just threw my back out last week. Didn't want to call off again or I'd lose hours." They worked in silence for a few minutes, the only sounds being the mechanical hum of the cooler and the occasional thud of boxes being stacked. The back room was cramped, with old shelving units and a flickering light overhead. There were no fans, and the air was heavy from the morning humidity. When they finished, Darren wiped his hands on his jeans and glanced at the break schedule posted on the door. Tino's name wasn't on it. "You get a lunch today?" Tino gave a dry laugh. "Not if I want to leave before midnight. Byron says if we're not here full shift, we don't get scheduled next week. So I just clock out at the end and eat then. A shift without food or a break." Darren clenched his jaw but didn't respond. Not yet. By mid-afternoon, he was back on the floor. The store was short one cashier due to a no-call, and Byron hadn't brought in anyone to cover. Gianna was juggling both checkouts while Darren bagged. The line stretched past the seasonal aisle. "We're getting slammed," Darren said quietly. "Yeah, it's been like this all week," Gianna replied between scanning items. "I tried asking for extra help yesterday, but he said it wasn't in the forecast." A woman in line tapped her foot impatiently. "Is there anyone else working registers?" Gianna offered a gentle apology and sped up, her hands moving with practiced rhythm. Darren noticed her wincing slightly with each scan. He leaned in. "You all right?" She didn't look at him. "I've got carpal tunnel. Compression gloves help, but it gets worse with no breaks." Darren nodded slowly, eyes narrowing. He watched Byron exit the office, holding a takeout cup and sipping casually. Gianna's voice dropped. "He's been in there for 2 hours. Byron spotted them and walked over. "You need to move that line faster," he said, tone low but sharp. Gianna didn't respond. Darren stepped forward. "We're down a register. Maybe we could rotate someone from stock." Byron looked him over, eyes cold. "You're a trainee. Don't overstep." He turned and disappeared into the back again. That night, Darren stayed after to help with closing. Tino was mopping the floor, limping slightly. Gianna was restocking returns with a quiet efficiency. Her gloves off now, fingers swollen and red. "Why do you stay here?" Darren asked, lowering his voice. Gianna looked at him, tired but direct. "Because I don't have a choice. Rent's due. I'm trying to help my brother pay for community college. My mom's between jobs. I don't get to leave just because it's hard." Darren nodded. "What about HR?" She gave a small shake of her head. "People complain. Nothing changes. Last girl who filed something disappeared from the schedule for 3 weeks. Then she quit." That night, Darren sat in his car an extra hour. He made a list on his phone. Names. Roles. What he'd seen. He wasn't going off instinct anymore. He had facts. The next day, a moment changed everything. A customer came in mid-morning, a man in his 50s with a sharp suit and impatient energy. He was holding a receipt and a broken kitchen appliance. Darren was working the returns desk, learning the process. "I bought this 2 days ago. It doesn't work. I want cash back." Darren started to explain the return policy. Store credit without packaging, cash refund with receipt and original form of payment. The man cut him off. "That's not acceptable. I'm not leaving until I get my money." Before Darren could respond, Byron appeared behind him. "Problem here?" he asked the customer. "Yes. This kid doesn't know what he's doing." Byron gave Darren a dismissive glance. "He's new. I'll handle it. Then he turned to the customer and laughed. You know how these temps are. No idea what real work looks like. Darren froze. That laugh? That tone? He had seen enough. After processing the refund, Byron pulled him aside near the stockroom. Next time, just call me. Don't argue with people who look like they have lawyers on speed dial. Darren looked straight at him. And talking down to your staff that helped the refund process? Byron's face hardened. You've been here 3 days. Don't act like you know how this place runs. I know toxic leadership when I see it. Byron stepped closer, voice dropping. You're not management. You're a disposable name tag. Don't test me. Darren's hand clenched, but he didn't react. Not here. Later that afternoon, he asked Gianna for a favor. Let's grab a coffee after your shift. My treat. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. They met at a small cafe 2 blocks away. It was quiet. No uniforms. No cameras. Darren waited until she had her drink in hand. My name's not Derek. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I'm Darren Mitchell. I own this company. Gianna stared at him for a long moment. That's not funny. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his ID, setting it on the table. She didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. You're the CEO? She asked slowly. I am. I've been in your store for 3 days. I've seen enough. She leaned back, stunned. Why come here like that? Because numbers lie. People don't. Gianna looked down at her hands. Are you going to fire Byron? Yes. Effective tomorrow morning. She exhaled, then covered her face with one palm. You really saw all of it. I did. But I need your help to fix it. She looked up. I steady now. I'm in. Darren left the cafe and called his chief of HR before he even reached the sidewalk. Terminate Byron immediately. No severance. Document everything. Then he called the district manager. Elena, we're going to talk. Tonight. He didn't sleep that night, but for the first time in months, he felt like he was finally doing the right thing. The next morning, Darren arrived at store 5, 30 minutes before open. The lot was still empty besides a few cars tucked along the far end of the parking strip. He unlocked the side entrance using the district master key, something he hadn't used in over a year, and stepped into the quiet of the pre-dawn store. The lights were still off, the air faintly cool. He walked past the break room, past the stockroom, and paused at the manager's office. Byron wasn't scheduled to come in. That decision had already been made. Elena, the district manager, arrived 15 minutes later. She didn't recognize Darren at first. Her expression was puzzled until he opened the office door and gestured her inside. There was no smile, no handshake. I've already spoken with HR, Darren said, closing the door behind them. We're terminating Byron. Final paperwork is in the system. I need to understand how this was allowed to go on this long. Elena set her bag down and folded her hands. We hadn't had any formal complaints that stuck. A few concerns, but nothing actionable. Darren's tone didn't waver. You visited the store how often? Every other week. Sometimes weekly. You never noticed the lack of breaks? The turnover? The way customers were being treated? I saw some tension, but Byron always had explanations. He's been with us a long time. Darren leaned forward. That ends today. Loyalty doesn't excuse negligence. I want you to sit in on every hiring decision this team makes for the next 60 days. Personally. No delegation. You'll be in store twice a week minimum. And if I find out you missed something else, you and I are going to have a very different conversation. Elena nodded slowly. Understood. Good. Go introduce yourself to the team. Properly this time. She left the office without another word. Darren sat alone for a moment, then pulled out a notebook. He flipped to a page labeled Immediate Actions and added a few more lines. One of them read, Leadership presence must be visible, not just performative. At 9, the store opened. Byron's absence was noted but not questioned. Tino arrived with a slower gait than usual, and Gianna walked in 5 minutes early, still pulling on her gloves. Darren had asked her to meet briefly before her shift. They stood near the customer service desk, away from the main floor. You're going to be offered a leadership development track. Darren said, voice low. It comes with a pay bump, part-time hours for training, and full health benefits. You'll still work the floor, but with a path forward. You've earned it. Gianna looked at him, eyes steady. What if I don't want to manage? What if I just want to work without hurting every night? You're not being pushed into anything, but I want you to have options. That starts now. She nodded once. All right, I'll try it. But I'm not babysitting for someone else's mess. You won't have to. I'll be here the next few days. By noon, the store was busier than usual. Word had started spreading quietly, carefully, that something had shifted. The air was different. Employees weren't walking on eggshells. Darren moved onto the floor wearing his badge again, this time with his real name. He helped with stocking, worked the register during a rush, and stepped in when a customer grew impatient with a trainee. He didn't announce himself or give speeches. He just worked. At the end of the shift, he walked the floor with Gianna. They paused near the end cap displays, ones she had set up the day before. You designed this? He asked. She nodded. We had a stack of clearance stock that wasn't moving. I reorganized it by practical use: kitchen, bath, home tools. It's been selling. You track the numbers? Every morning. I log it in a spreadsheet. Just something I do for myself. Send it to me. I want to see it. That night, he stayed after close again, this time cleaning the register counters and checking the employee area for basic supplies. The break room fridge was nearly empty, with only a half-used creamer and a few takeout containers. He made a note to restock it with essentials. Not a grand gesture, just decency. The next day, a new assistant manager arrived. Melissa pulled in from another location. She was sharp, no nonsense, and had a reputation for fairness. Darren introduced her quietly to the team. Melissa's here to support, not control. She's been briefed. She knows exactly what this store needs. Gianna watched the exchange with guarded curiosity. Later, while restocking aisle 4 with Tino, Darren asked, "You ever think about going full-time?" Tino shrugged, setting down a box of detergent. "I'm trying to finish school. But yeah, if the hours were steady and I didn't have to wreck my back." Darren crouched beside him. "What do you need to stay?" "Respect. Predictable schedule. And maybe a fan in the back room. It's like a furnace in there." The next morning, a maintenance order was submitted for the backroom ventilation. By afternoon, a portable fan arrived. Small things first. The structural changes would take time. By the end of the week, Darren called the team together in the break room. No HR, no cameras. Just the staff and a few folding chairs. "I came in to see what was wrong," he began. "I found people doing the best they could under pressure they didn't create. That ends here." He paused, scanning their faces. "We're increasing staffing. You'll see new applications rolling through soon. Schedules will be posted a full week in advance. No more last-minute cuts. Breaks will be enforced. If someone skips one, it's on management, not you." A few people nodded. Tino leaned forward slightly. "I'll be back next month. Not for a meeting, just to work a shift." Gianna raised her hand. "Can we ask questions? Please. You going to do this at every store?" Darren didn't hesitate. "Starting Monday." She nodded. "Good. Some of them need it worse than we did." After the meeting, he stepped outside alone. The sun had already dipped past the roof line, casting long shadows across the pavement. The store behind him was still humming, orders being closed out, shelves being restocked. He looked back once before heading to his car. He wasn't coming back as Derek Miles again. But Darren Mitchell wasn't leaving the floor behind either. Not anymore. For the next 10 days, Darren kept to a quiet rhythm. He didn't make speeches. He didn't send out memos. He simply showed up. Sometimes early, sometimes late, always unannounced. He rotated between stores, but he came back to store 5 every third day, not to monitor, but to keep his promise. He ran a register during rushes. He stocked shelves when a truck was late. He took returns when the desk backed up. The staff began to adjust, unsure at first, but gradually steadier. No one knew exactly where he would be or when, and that was by design. Darren wasn't interested in being the kind of leader who only appeared when things were broken. He wanted to be present before they cracked. Melissa, the newly assigned assistant manager, had taken to the team naturally. She didn't hover, didn't bark orders. She listened. She rotated shifts fairly, and when she asked someone to stay late, she always checked if it was manageable first. She didn't expect gratitude. She expected honesty. One afternoon, Darren stood near the end of the home goods aisle, reorganizing a row of mismatched mugs. Gianna passed by with a box of overstock and paused. "You know you're not required to do that, right?" "I know," Darren said, still aligning the handles. "But customers notice when things feel intentional." She set her box down. "Intentional's a good word." "That's what's been different lately." Darren straightened up and brushed dust off his forearms. "What do you mean?" "It's not just the rules changing. It's the way people hold themselves. Tino's standing taller. Customers aren't snapping as much. Even the regulars started asking for names." She didn't say it like she was impressed. Just observing. "Good," Darren said. "That's the goal." Gianna picked up her box again. "We still need more bodies. The shifts are thinner than they should be." "I know. HR's filtering applicants now, but it takes time." "You think anyone here is ready to move up?" She thought for a few seconds. "Alicia. She's been quiet, but she watches everything. Catches little mistakes before they happen. I'll make sure Melissa pulls her aside this week." Gianna didn't respond right away. Then she asked something he hadn't expected. "What made you do it? Come down here like that?" Darren didn't answer immediately. He leaned against the end cap, looking out across the store. "Because I forgot what it felt like to be small. And the moment I realized I didn't know what my team was carrying, that's when I knew I'd lost sight." She looked at him for a moment longer, then nodded and walked off without another word. 2 days later, a formal HR visit was scheduled. Not a surprise inspection. Darren had insisted it be announced and voluntary. A new regional HR lead, Marissa, came in to sit down with anyone who wanted to talk. She stayed the full day, rotating between the break room and the stockroom, taking private notes. By the end of the day, she had spoken to nearly every team member. Not everyone had complaints, but those who did finally had somewhere safe to speak. Darren stayed out of the room entirely. He didn't want his presence to influence what anyone said. The next morning, Marissa sent him a secure document. He read every line. 3 accounts confirmed that Byron had routinely mocked employees based on their appearance, calling one cashier too heavy to move fast, telling another that she looked like a ghost on her bad days. He'd made jokes about accents, mocked a part-time employee's stutter, and referred to another staff member as brooding and weird, because they preferred not to talk during breaks. Every one of these accounts was corroborated by more than one person. Darren forwarded the report to legal and HR compliance with a single line. Documented. Follow up with each employee. Offer wellness and counseling support. Full confidentiality. He then made a phone call to Elena. "We're done with sidestepping. From now on, any discriminatory or demeaning behavior is grounds for immediate dismissal. No warnings. No coaching plans. Zero tolerance. Make sure every manager signs off on this in writing." She didn't argue. She didn't have room to. The hiring process began to speed up within the week. HR had rerouted their normal pipeline to push more qualified applicants to store 5. Carefully vetted. No one was thrown in just to fill space. Darren had made that clear. One good hire was worth 3 rushed ones. In the meantime, he authorized a temporary shift buffer, an emergency relief pool of 3 floaters who could be called in across the stores when gaps opened up. It wasn't a long-term fix, but it gave staff breathing room. One of those floaters, a man named Dev, ended up covering a shift on a stormy Friday night. He was fast, friendly, and had a quiet way of helping others without pushing in. After his shift, Gianna pulled Darren aside. "If he wants a permanent spot, you should give him one." "I'll talk to him," Darren said. Thanks. The next day, Dev was offered a permanent role with full benefits. He accepted on the spot. By the end of the second week, something unexpected happened. Customer reviews, normally a trickle of generic 5-star entries, and the occasional complaints started getting personal. One read, "I had a rough day, and Gianna at checkout made it feel better just by treating me like a person." Another, "The new guy helped me get my car out of a snowdrift after closing. I didn't even catch his name." And then, "This store feels different. Warmer. Like the people want to be here." Darren printed those out and pinned them on the break room wall. Not for show. For gratitude. He stood beside Melissa as she read them silently. "This place has changed," she said, folding her arms. "Not just the people. The way it feels." "It wasn't broken," Darren replied. "It was neglected." She nodded. "We can't let it slip back." "We won't." Later that evening, before the store closed, Darren pulled Gianna aside again. "Your leadership program starts next week. They'll fly you to headquarters for 2 days, then give you a project to bring back here." Gianna raised an eyebrow. "You sure I'm the right one? I've never been more certain. And what if I mess it up? Then you'll learn. And we'll adjust." She looked at him for a long beat, then exhaled through her nose. "All right, let's see what I can do." As she walked away, Darren watched the teamwork behind her. Alicia calmly guiding a nervous new hire through her first end-of-day report. Tino joking with Dev while pushing a cart of restock. Melissa confirming next week's deliveries with the warehouse rep. Darren stepped outside into the cooling air. The sky had turned a soft amber, brushed with the last light of day. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt grounded. He hadn't solved everything. Not yet. But the people had been seen. The systems had been changed. And the silence, the dangerous kind, the one that lets rock go unnoticed, was gone. That was enough to begin again. The right way.